Josh Berker. This is our 4th Camp Explore workshop of the summer, and our thanks to Roz and Bud Siegel for their generous support of this program. So, since we've had a few technological problems the last few days, I'm going to reintroduce Josh in just a moment. But for all you remote participants, please type up in the chat a manual way of speaking up, I guess, and let Tyesha know what's happening, and we can relay your questions, concerns, requests, everything to Josh for today's workshop. And now, it is my pleasure, believe it or not, for the 3rd time to introduce Josh Berker for the host of this week's workshop. Josh is a middle division educational technologist at the school at Columbia University. He has taught in both public and private schools and workshops for teachers for the past 19 years, working with logo programming, robotics, fabrication, electronics, and art. He writes books and consults on educational projects that he finds inclusive and disruptive, which I find wonderful.
Thank you.
He is the author of the Invent to Learn Guide to Fun, which inspires makers of all ages to explore the intersection of crafting and technology through whimsical, creative projects. Thank you all, and here's Josh.
Thank you, Margaret. All right, I hope everyone's had fun the past 2 days, and today we're gonna wrap up our play around TurtleArt and ArtLogo. And I thought what we should start with is kind of picking up where we left off in ArtLogo yesterday. And then I have a good challenge for us to examine how to do inputs in TurtleArt, because that was an exciting part of ArtLogo, was being able to, for example, make a dot a different size using the same piece of code. So let's jump right into it, and then we'll see where it takes us. So the code that we wrote yesterday, we could get that up on the big screen here. There we go, cool. So the code we wrote yesterday is built around this dot procedure that we wrote, that we can define the size of the dot, the color of the dot, and the shade of the dot. And that in turn feeds the pen size, the color, and the shade before the turtle goes forward 0, which leaves a dot. And then we wrote a master procedure that cleans the screen, hides the turtle, fills the screen towards a light gray, and then repeats 100 times, jump the turtle randomly around the stage there, and draw dots that are anywhere from size 4 to 50, that are anywhere from red all the way up through violet, and that have a shade anywhere from 30 to 80. And if you're following at home or even here, in the link here to Google Drive, I'm on the Remix and Gallery walk page. This procedure is uploaded for everyone in the ArtLogo folder. And it is Westport 7, artlogo.png. And you can control click or right click on that to download it. And it'll drop it onto your computer. And then you could drag and drop that into ArtLogo, and it'll bring the code and the image in there, saving you needing to retype it. So when we run the procedure, we get dots that are in a different place every time. And again, because we've built the tool to have some inputs, we can quickly change that maybe 4 is too small. That's one of these little guys here. So maybe the smallest is 20, and the largest becomes 100. And when we run that, we get a more crowded field of circles. So maybe that's too crowded with those dots approaching 100, so maybe we back that back to 80, and that becomes a little more manageable. And then maybe we change how many times it's repeating until we find something that we like. So the fun part about this tool was the inputs. And I mentioned very briefly in passing yesterday that TurtleArt also has inputs. And I realized that in one of those reference guides I gave you a link to, Brian and Paula specifically talk about using input. So let's build a procedure in TurtleArt that has an input, okay? And I'm going to show you here an image. So one of the cool things about the Westport Library is there's lots of TurtleArt everywhere you go in the building. We riffed on the rug here and the carpet here in the forum on Monday. And I took a picture yesterday, but we didn't get to it, but we're going to get to it here in a few minutes. But I took a picture of this design here, and I liked it because it's, again, that kind of random, there's randomness to it, but it's not so complex that we can't recreate it easily. So here in TurtleArt, I'm going to make my blocks a little bigger here. Maybe we start with a procedure that can draw a square. And by now we're all pretty accustomed to the idea of repeating 4 times and going forward. And since I'm right-handed, I always make the turtle go right, like that. Now, we know from past experience that when we do that, it draws a square that is that big. And we haven't added a fill block to it yet, so maybe we'll do that here and here, and that will give us a box that fills at the end, okay? But that's a single-purpose box, right? Single-purpose square, because it's going to be 100 on the side every time we run it. So there's a little secret here, that if I go to the yellow tab here and grab one of these hat blocks, and I name it, let's name it square, and it creates a block for me here called square that doesn't do anything yet because there's no commands attached to it. But then, up here, next to store in box 1, I'm going to grab this box 1 block, and I'm going to drop it on the hat. And maybe I need to do this, like, how do I do this? There we go. I kind of had to fiddle with it to get it to snap. If I drop it right on the name, square, it snaps. And then what this does, if I replace the forward 100 with forward box 1, is now the square has an input. So when I drag out square from the side here, you notice it's no longer just a block that'll run the square procedure, but instead it's a block that has a number attached. So square 100 we're used to, but I can change that. And it can really be any number I need it to be. Cool. So we've built a more versatile square tool. Well, let's take a peek real quick back here. Those squares are pretty small. And the other thing is, I noticed, is that this square, no matter how big it is or how small it is, it's always drawn from a heading of 0. So we might want to add here something that changes which way it's facing. So maybe we set the heading to 2 and try running it. Cool. Similarly, if we set it to -4 and run it, we can turn it off center that way. And if we do it'll go even further. Okay, so our tool is getting a little more powerful, but it would be nice, again, if we didn't have to think too much about this and had the computer think about it for us. So let's have it change the heading randomly anywhere from, let's say, 4 degrees all the way around the circle to 356, otherwise known as -4. And let's run that a couple times and see what it does. Okay, great. Okay. Nice. These look a little more twisted, some of them. That guy almost looks like 45 degrees. So now we're getting a bit more turn. Nice. Ooh. Sweet. Okay, let's play with that and see where that takes us. Okay. It looks to me like the squares are pretty small in this. There's a lot of this background and many of these. So let's maybe make our square 20 and see how big that looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. We could fit a lot of those on the screen. But again, they aren't uniform. Some are smaller than the others, and we won't mention that some of them, are skewed and some of them are more rectangular. We're simplifying the design a little bit here. But let's maybe do a square again that's a random from, maybe let's go from 10 to 20. I'm just going to move these so they're out of our way. And let's run a few of those. Okay, there's a tiny one. And let's pick up the turtle and just run it again. Let's see where we get. A little bigger. Nice. Okay, that one turned right. Beautiful. Okay. All right, we're getting there. So then there's many of them, and you'll notice I'm picking up the turtle, which, got to make sure I wash my hands afterwards. But it would be nice if our code could pick up the turtle for us, right? So maybe what we'll do is we'll add this set XY block here. And having done this for a while, I know this by heart, but being new to it, remember if we click on a block and hold, it'll tell us some important information about the block. So in this case, the important information is we can go anywhere from -350, which is over here on the left, all the way up to 350 over here on the right. Likewise, we can go from 280 all the way down to -280. Our biggest square is going to be 20. If we roll the dice and we get a natural 20, that's the biggest square we're going to get. So let's maybe go anywhere from minus 330. So we aren't right up against the edge, but we're staying on our canvas. So minus 330 all the way up to 330. And likewise, we'll let the turtle go anywhere from minus 260 to 260. And then our square should stay on our background. Like so. Okay, so now, if we do that, there's my turtle. So it drew it pretty randomly. That's a pretty random place on the screen. If I run it again, there's a different place on the screen, different tilt. He's hiding behind the blocks, drawing now. Nice. Okay, cool. This is working, but it's only drawing one square at a time. So I think what we'll do is let's tell it to repeat. And we'll tell it to repeat maybe 50 times. And let's see how many that fills. Oh, cool. We're getting somewhere. Notice that the more you ask the turtle to do, the faster the turtle actually moves. When we were just having it draw one turtle, it drew it kind of slowly so you could see it doing it, you know, to put a little explanation into the magic. All right, this is looking pretty good. Let's switch back over here, okay? So one thing I notice is that I'm operating in a white background, and this background is speckled black. So we could start with filling the screen, and you know me, I like that negative 99920. I like that. But even though there's glare in the photo, you can see it's catching the light quite a bit. So it would be cool if we wrote a little procedure, I think, because we got the time. Let's write a little procedure to speckle that background a bit. So let's start with this hat block. And let's call it what it is, speckle. And to speckle, we're going to set our pen size really fine. It's going to be like a 1. And our background here is 20. So the shade is, rather. Let's set the color to the same as our background. But let's bump the shade up a little bit. Like 20, let's try 25 to begin with. And then we learned yesterday in ArtLogo with drawing dots, it's a forward 0 leaves us a dot. Now, this is going to be awfully hard to see right now with just one of them because it's really small. So let's do this. Let's clean the screen. And let's run it. And then let's hide the turtle. You see it? So 1 is probably a little small. Let's try our standard 4. And run it, hide everything. Yeah, that looks good. Now, we got to test and see how it looks with this fill. So we'll start our procedure by filling the screen. And then let's run that speckle procedure a lot. And we already have this code kind of figured out, but here we're going to let it run all the way to the edge. So we're going to let it run anywhere from minus 350 to 350. Likewise, negative 280 to 280. And then let's take a peek. Yeah, that's like pretty much everywhere. So let's repeat it a lot of times because this turtle is pretty indefatigable, right? Doesn't get tired. So let's repeat 1,000 times. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, not enough difference in that shade. So let's go all the way up to 35. I'm still not seeing it, right? Let's go really obvious and go to 95. It doesn't look like it's actually drawing anything. Set shade 95, set pen size 4, speckle. Let's do this. Let's erase the screen.
We have a question in the chat.
Yes.
Someone wants to know, how do they save something in one of those yellow boxes?
How do they type something?
I'm not sure if it's a type.
Yeah, if you drag it out and click on it so it's surrounded in blue, then you can type whatever you'd like in it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so for some reason this is not, oh, well, we aren't going to notice. Let's set this to 50. Doesn't look like the turtle's doing anything. Forward, oh, I see why it's not doing anything. We need to speckle, and we also need to, include, so here, this is a good lesson. So I had this in here, but what were we asking it to do? Well, we were asking it to fill the screen, go someplace random, and then speckle 1,000 times. So when we run that, it was weird, like I'm not seeing anything. And so we bumped the shade to 35, thinking, well, maybe that'll do it. Still not seeing anything. Well, there it is. The problem is where we tucked our code. So we told it to jump someplace random, but we only told it to jump someplace random once. We need to tell it to jump someplace random 1,000 times. So it's got to go in that repeat loop there. Okay, getting there. I think we need more, right? And I think if we're going to add more of them, let's make the pen size a little smaller. And let's try 5,000 of those. Nice. Okay, there's a few empty spots. So I think we could get away with working that turtle a little harder. Let's bump it all the way up to 10,000. See what that looks like. Beautiful. That's the stuff. All right, so we don't have a boring solid background, but we have like a textured background. And we kind of tinkered away at that, figuring out the pen size along the way, playing with the shade, and also figuring out you really need to pay attention to the order your blocks are going in. We had the right intention, but not the right order. Okay, once you've speckled, let's use these little spacer blocks here to move this out so our code doesn't overlap. Once we've speckled, we'd like it to do this. And so we can add our code that we already wrote, the repeat 50 times, draw those boxes. Let's see here. Nice. Let's see how that compares. Pretty close. Our boxes aren't the right color though. We're partway there because we're writing on the fact that speckle sets a color other than red. it sets that gray, or the neutral color that we can get towards a nice clean white or a nice clean black. And it sets a shade. So we can keep the color, but let's, for debugging's sake, because maybe at some point you want to change the color that this all runs in. For debugging's sake, let's move the color out here, because both our background and our blocks are going to be, our squares are going to be that gray color, as it were, and the difference is the shade. So here, before the repeat 50, let's set our shade to 100. And let's try to run that and see what we get. Nice. I think we can probably repeat a few more times the squares. I'm going to try 75. Yeah, I think we're there. So let me do this. Let's download this as Westport. I think I'm all the way up to 8. Westport 8. Let me just double check. Yes, Westport 8. I'm going to download that, and then I'm going to tuck that in the Google Drive. And you may notice on the Google Drive here, I'm going to zoom out, there's a lot there all of a sudden. That's because over breakfast this morning, I dumped a entire class worth of student work from a past life experience that we can take a look at shortly, and you could download and remix it. Charlotte's tree is an excellent design, as is Anushka's repeating tiling flower design. I noticed somebody in our group programmed this amazing exploding star. So we're getting some great artwork out of here. Eye in the Darkness, I think, was somebody's. That one's beautiful as well. So we'll have a potential here shortly to remix it. But if you missed a step along our way, I just put Westport 8 in the TurtleArt folder. So you can download that and drop it into TurtleArt. So, nice. Now remember, we built a tool here that's modular in that our square right here, we can quickly change that. And so maybe we want it to only repeat 10 times, but we want a square that's 50 to 100. And then suddenly it becomes like instead of looking at that artwork from back here, I'm looking at it really close. So I've changed the kind of the perspective of what the viewer is seeing. And this is one of my joys in TurtleArt, is I'll program a tool like this and I'll work through a variety of it. So I'll pretend okay, let's look at the artwork really close. Let's start with big squares, but maybe there's only going to be 3 of them on there. In the background, I think we can kind of keep the background the same. We could tweak speckle a bit, I guess, at this big level. Let's make that happen. Okay, let's set the pen size up to 10. Probably don't need to repeat it 10,000 times, though, if it's 10, because that would really fill the screen. But maybe let's start with 500. Cool. That looks like I'm looking at the art closer than the docents like me to be. Okay, and then maybe I change one number here in speckle, maybe we change it to, oh, sorry, maybe I save this as Westport 8B. Okay, and then I change the pen size to 5 on speckle, and I'm gonna repeat speckle 1,000 times now, but square is gonna get smaller. It's gonna go from like 75 to 150. Cool. I need more of those squares. Let's run that again, and let's maybe triple the number of potential squares there. Yeah, that's too many. Let's go back to 6. Okay, that's the stuff. Download that one too, but change the name to 8C. Okay, let's get that pen size back down to 2. And our box size is gonna be, we're gonna go back to 25 to 50. And maybe 12 of those. And speckle at 2, we know we can do 10,000 times. So let's do that. Great. I like that one too. That's 8D. All right. And then finally, we'll go back to 25 of these and small squares, 10 to 20. And I get that. And we'll name that one 8E. And then suddenly I have like a collection that could go in a gallery as part of a show where we work our way through the art from very close to further away. And that's kind of one of my processes when I'm programming in TurtleArt or ArtLogo, because it's so easy to make those tiny changes and to regenerate the art quickly. Faster than I could paint it, for sure. And I would argue it's also faster than, you know, many other programming languages to quickly bust out an image like that. So that's pretty cool. I'm psyched about that one. There's another piece of TurtleArt here in the library that I thought would be fun to play with back in ArtLogo. So it's this piece here. And one thing I noticed, let's see, gray, light gray, white, black. White, light gray, gray, ivory, maybe we'll call that ivory, black. So I don't see the same color touching one another, right? And fortunately, I see 4 colors. That'll make life so much easier. Okay, but the same color is not touching. We don't have light gray touching light gray, nor do we have black touching black, or white, white, or ivory, ivory. You'll also notice, like yesterday, well, no, Monday, when we did the rug in here. Let's see. Let's go back to just the simplest of this pattern. When we did this version, there's no grout in the rug, right? The colors touch each other. But these tiles here, there's grout in between the tiles. So they're slightly offset from one another. So our design ought to take account the fact that the rectangles aren't touching, okay? Another thing I notice is the rows are staggered. So if we go back to our rug here, not staggered. And our rug in here, if we look, it's not staggered either. There's rows and columns that align. These tiles, it's knocked over the second row in the middle here. It looks like it's knocked over, what do you judge that as, a third? So when we jump down the Y position to get to our second row, we need to not go all the way to negative 350. Maybe go a little bit beyond 350. Okay, you guys ready for this challenge? So let's move to ArtLogo. And I'm gonna erase that. So we have a kind of a new shape that we haven't yet tried to program yet, but it's a familiar shape, fortunately. It's called a rectangle. So let's call this one toRect. And I'm lazy, I'm just gonna type R-E-C-T for rectangle. So toRect in this case is going to be, oh, and we probably, let's build some inputs. Let's do the color of it. And that ought to do the trick, I think. I'm just trying to think this through on the fly here. Let's take a peek back at that. Yep, that's basically what they got as a color. Okay, so unfortunately it's all, we can kind of take care of it all with negative 9999 to start with. But again, you may get bored of gray and you may choose to do orange tiles or green tiles or blue tiles or indigo tiles or violet tiles. We'll play with that too. So we'll do a rectangle that we're allowed to also feed it the color. So I think the first thing we'll do is we'll say set the color to the color. And then we're gonna say repeat 2 times, left bracket. Now you're saying to yourself, wait, a rectangle has 4 sides, but the sides are 2 different lengths. So we're gonna do go forward 100, go right 90, because I'm right-handed, I always think in that direction, go forward 50, go right 90, right bracket, and then we're done. So over here, we can type rect red. Cool. It gives me that. And a rect blue does that. Sweet. Okay. Is that rectangle big enough for everyone? We're going to have a lot of rectangles, but that's cool, right? Okay. Sweet. So now, let's think about our tiling. So in the past, what we did is we said, draw the object, and then set the x coordinate, the width of that object, you know, wherever you currently are, plus the width of that object, and stay on the same y coordinate. We need to go a little further. And again, I'm right-handed, so I always tend to move the turtle to the right. So we need to go a little further than the width of our rectangle. So let's make a new procedure over here on the left side called, bump this like that, to tile. And we can say set XY to X coordinate space plus, and we know from here that our small side is 50, so let's do 60. And stay on the same Y coordinate. And then we'll end. So that's just a really short procedure. So now I ought to be able to say rect blue tile. Cool. Drew me a blue one. Rect orange tile. Sweet. This is working a charm. Rect red tile. Awesome. Okay, one thing I notice is that the tiles here are colored. So back up under our rectangle, let's, after the set color, let's do a start fill, all one word. And after the repeat right bracket, let's hit a return and do an end fill. And so if I clean and do an orange tile, I get a filled one, a red tile, blue tile. Sweet. Okay, getting closer. And we have a gap. There's a gap. So this is working beautifully. Great, so I think we're almost to the point where we pull up the ArtLogo reference for a moment, because I need to take a look at some syntax here. And specifically, I want to try and play with some logic here. Actually, I think that is at home on the ArtLogo reference. And what I'm looking at is down here under flow, if, okay? So these are setting conditions. So in this case, we're saying if the y coordinate's greater than 100, you should stop. Otherwise, you're going forward 10. So, because I think what we want to do is offload us making the decision as to what color the tile is. Or we make our life a little easier. Let's see if ArtLogo real quick, if it has a, yeah, it doesn't have a one of, I don't think. Let's look under the math real quick. One of, they do. Okay, we can do one of. Okay, sweet. Set color one of. That's the command we're going to use. So what we can do then, though actually I wonder, yeah, cool. So then what we can do is we're using the same color, but it's going to be the shade that we're dealing with. So we could do, let's try rectangle -9999, and that gives us this gray one. And if we do set shade one of, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can get this all on one line. Set shade one of 50, well, let's make it really obvious, 20 or 90 rectangle -999. And if I run that again, let's run it with tile so it jumps. There we go. Great, okay. So it is either doing a 20 or a 90. So I think we're going to need that twice because we have 4 different shades of tile in there. So we can do something like to go. We're going to write our master procedure now. And we're going to say clean the screen, hide the turtle. And then we're going to set XY to negative, let's do 346. And how tall is our rectangle again? 100. 176, because I want a margin on the left and I want a margin on the top for the grout. Okay, so go all the way up there. And let's just put an end here real quick and we can kind of troubleshoot as we go. So go. And let's show the turtle real quick. Okay, good. That's what I was hoping would happen. Okay, so after we set the XY, we're going to repeat. And let's start, we know the screen is 700 across, and we know that our rectangle is 50 wide. So 700 divided by 50 is 15. So let's repeat 15 times, left bracket. And then I'm going to copy this. And we are going to change the 15 to 7 because, I'll explain in a second, we need 2 of these lines because we also need to set the shade to either completely white or completely black. And let's put a right bracket here, so we don't forget that. And let's run go and see what that produces. Great. Just what I hoped. Okay, so we've gotten 1 row across, right? Now we need to bump it down. So when you're done with that repeat of 7, we're going to set our XY back to negative 346. But what did I say at the beginning? These aren't aligned, right? So we actually, let's go a little further and say, go ahead and let's set it to negative 360. And we'll tinker with this. And then our Y coordinate minus 104, right? We'll find out in a second.
Hey, Josh,
Yes.
your set XY above didn't have your Y coordinate written out, and yet you write it out in the one below?
Because this line, what I'm asking it to do is whatever Y coordinate you're currently at minus 104. Here I'm saying go specifically to this exact spot. So this is relative to where you currently are. And that way I don't have to make one for every jump down. I'm saying wherever you are, minus 104. That's a good catch there. Thank you. So after you're done with that, knock yourself down a line. And we need to repeat this whole thing a number of times. Let's try repeating it 7 times, left bracket. And then we'll put our right bracket after that 104. So let's see where that gets us. Sweet. Now, here's another problem I'm seeing. The second row is great, okay? It's offset. But then the third row it starts to fall into columns. So we have to tell it, we have to change this slightly. We're going to tell it to repeat 3 times this whole mess. Because once you've done the second column, which is here, the set XY negative 360, Y coordinate minus 104, you need to do this. This is getting ugly though. Our code is getting really bulky. So what we're going to do is this. Here's where we are. let's make this whole procedure where we're setting the shade and drawing rectangles, let's make that its own procedure. So let's cut that. And down below here, we're going to call it to art. And then I'm going to paste and end. So here, we're going to repeat 7 times art. I'll move this back here. And when you're done with that, jump down a line using this code. And then I need you to repeat 7 times art. So offset. And then we need to jump back to negative 346 and your y coordinate minus 104. At which point it goes back up to the top of the loop and runs art again. I'm going to put the other, yep, that bracket is where it needs to be. Let's run it now. There we go. Now it offsets. Now, it looks to me like I'm not moving enough down because this block is touching this block with no gap like we're seeing here. So let's change these numbers to 106. Whoops. And run it. There we go. Now we have a gap. And then the last thing is things are kind of blending in a weird way. And that's because our background, we need to grout our background. So after we clean, let's fill the screen with negative 999, 10, just to mix things up. And that gets us that. And it looks like we kind of need to tweak our art here. Let's bump. The 20 seems awfully close to the 0 in appearance. Let's jump it to 40. So the first one will be set shade 1 of 40 or 90. And then the second one's, oh, and 90 is awfully close to 100. Let's maybe change that to 70. So 40, 70, 100, and 0. And run that. There we go. Look at that. We're getting there. I like it. If you hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and click the picture, it goes full screen for you. So you can really admire your art. That looks good. So, let's, over here in the Command Center, save image, all one word, quotation mark. And this one's Westport 9 ArtLogo in my case. And when I hit return, it's going to download that. And I'm going to put it in Google Drive under ArtLogo. Oops. There we go. Now there's that one for you to play. So again, you may get tired of this monochrome look to it, and you can change in one place what numbers you're using and completely change the image.
Can you please scroll up to the top of your code for a second so we can just see the full code? Thank you.
So it's 4 chunks of code. And if you need to, you can grab it, download it from Google Drive, and then drop it into your ArtLogo window, and you'll have the code. And so we were playing around here with maybe changing it, and I changed it to the same number. and got that. But you could change them to two different numbers. Maybe take the negatives out, because negative changes it in ways that's a little weird. There's two different colors. Let's see, color, rectangle, 75, yep, good. So very, very easy to change the colors and even change the whole intent of the design. We're running out of squares here, and we didn't notice this before, but see, repeating it 7 times isn't enough. So this repeat here, we need to change to 8, and this repeat here, we also need to change to 8. That's in our go procedure, to go. So repeat 7, bracket, repeat 8, art, offset, repeat 8, art, offset. And that swings back around. So now if we run that, it fills the screen. We don't lose tiles at the end. Let me change this back to -9999. Run it and save the image as Westport 9B art logo. And I'm going to add that to Google Drive for people to play around with as well. Sweet. So at this point, I mentioned to a couple of you here physically with me at the beginning that I always think it's a good idea to give people an opportunity to look at other people's code, because people solve problems, the same problem in different ways. And so it might be interesting for you to download some of the code that people have added to the folders. I can speak to the Dreamtime Variations mine, and the Subway Mosaic is mine, and then the Westport ones are mine as well. The Subway Mosaic one, we download that one. This is probably at 110th, where my job was, and so I, again, was inspired by that. You'll notice, if we go full screen, that the smaller tiles aren't right next to each other, because what I was trying to go for was the hand-set look that the Subway mosaics, some of them have. So the big Subway tiles, the background tiles, they're uniform, but the tiny tiles aren't. And the way that I got that code was I told it to go forward 50 for the square, and then instead of going right 90, which we're used to doing when we draw a square, it's going right either anywhere from 89 to 91, so it's slightly skewed. And it's also using a red fill procedure, to change what the color is, where it is in the red, and then has some code to make the horizontal and the vertical march. So you can download that code and play around with it in ArtLogo. And then likewise here in TurtleArt, there's work that people here have put in this week. Mine is all, again, called Westport and a number. But you'll also notice a lot of names in here, and these are the names of former students of mine and the work that they created in a class that I taught them years ago. So if you like Clarine's design, for example, you could download it, and then in TurtleArt, drag and drop Clarine 8A into TurtleArt, and you'll get Clarine's code. And so maybe instead of a dark background, you want a light background, and you run it again, and you get that. And then with that lighter background, maybe you decide, oh, that shade's running a little on, I'm losing the design in the shade, so we'll set that a little lighter, and suddenly I have something completely different. So, and you can see how people did it. You know, that's kind of the interesting, fun part with TurtleArt is that the code's all there for you to play with. Like, for example, we played with this a little bit in ArtLogo yesterday, but Corrine has a spiral, essentially, that's growing in this design because she's changing the radius with every step here by 10. Let's see, what's another particularly exciting one here? This exploding star, somebody here wrote this one. This one's really fun. I love the complexity of it. I got that one, so let's run this one. I mean, any procedure called Ninja, you know that's legit. So that one's really, really cool. Maybe the way that I change it, let's find the rest of the blocks here. There's sky, star, and ninja. Nice. There's a spiky and a forward. So maybe the way that I change this one is to, I have to find myself here where all the blocks are, is I'm going to move everything down slightly. Here it is. I'm going to clean, I'm going to fill the screen again, but I'm going to move down ever so slightly. I'm going to say keep it at 0x because that's where this one was starting, but maybe let's try this at -50. And there we go. And then it all those rays fit on the screen. And then I could even, you know, while we're here, play around with where the X starts and see, yeah, kind of get that centered in the screen like that, make it my own, you know. Let's see if there's any other beautiful ones here. Jonah was really going for like a three-dimensional line in his. Exploding star B, let's call that one. Jonah's had these kind of ribbons almost that he did. So his code here, it looks like he's cleaning, filling the screen, and running 3D. And what 3D does, looks like, is it runs fib. It goes right 120 degrees and runs fib. And so fib does that, okay? And fib has as part of it square, I believe, yep. And he's doing something weird with the variables to create this cool kind of almost like Fibonacci sequence, right? And then the 3D, what it's doing is it's turning 120 degrees, drawing fib, and then he's moving a little bit and changing the shape, which produces this crazy, and he's also stepping through the shade. And so in the end, it produces this really beautiful recessed look to it. You know, and that's like I mentioned on day one, I think that I saw my friend Alex work in ArtLogo this week that's so different from my work, you know, that it was really cool that the same tool can produce such different work. But, you know, this is, I think I saw one of my TurtleArt images this morning. I played with this idea at some point, but I don't think I took it as far as Jonah managed to take it in the complexity. You know, that's kind of the same idea, where I'm drawing the box, going forward a little bit, and right a little bit, right a lot rather, and going forward and changing the shade to kind of grow that really quickly. So I think there's real value in looking at kind of how other people do the code and playing around with it. Let's see how Anushka did so go ahead and, you know, you can continue to listen to me up here or grab an image that you're interested in dissecting and open, you know, download it, open it up. You know, like Anushka's flowers are beautiful here. It might be interesting to see where she's running, setting the color here. Looks like that's the color. If you want a blue flower instead, we could change that, you know, change the number one place. If you want a red flower, change it to 2, and you get that. You could also play with the number of repeats. 1, 2, 3, 4 is probably a good number. So if we would repeat it 4 times and we don't move over this far, maybe we only go to negative 320. Need to go a little further. Right, so negative 200 and see where we got. There we go. And it looks like she's also bumping. That's our move here. We need to change this to negative 200. Oh, I see where we're going with this. Maybe change this to negative 225. Nice, and then this could be negative 205, and then it looks like she might be setting it a 3rd time. So I want to get this 3rd column here lined up beautifully. I've lost the code. I unsnapped some code. I like the looks of this one. But I think I would run it in a different color, and I think it would be interesting to play around. This one may have gotten damaged because it's not letting me open it. Here's a really nice one. So we've mostly been doing, you know, geometric patterns, but some people like Sydney, who I showed you her work on Monday with the ocean with the moon over it, or Madeline, they went very representational. So Madeline has this beautiful sky and stars and the moon and then this cliff that she draws. So there's the same idea that we played with today with the random stars. At least I imagine she's randomizing it, yep. So her stars stamp randomly around the sky. And then it does the moon. She did forward 0. And then did that. So that's another kind of interesting point to touch on, is making circles. We did them as dots going forward 0 and setting our pen size appropriately. Okay, so we can do that. And you could get some interesting art out of that idea with a variable. So if we store it in the box 1, 500, and then we set our pen size to box 1, and then we went forward 0, and then we stored in box 1 whatever is currently in box 1 minus 10. Let's see, minus 50. Let's do it that way. And we're going to repeat this 10 times. And we're also going to set the shade to whatever our shade currently is, plus 5. Let's see if this does what I think it will. Oh, we also, yeah, we didn't change our pen size, so minus 50, the pen size, box 1. Oh, again, order matters. I got to store in box 500 outside the repeat to get what I want it to do. There we go. Nice. And then again, it's very easy to save this We're all the way up to 10, Westport 10.
Can you just zoom in on the code?
Yeah, sorry. So this is just a simple piece of code where we're drawing circles and we're changing the shade with every pass and changing the pen size. And then we can tuck in this to quickly be able to iterate on it. So I could save that out as 10A, 10B, and so on and so forth. And then suddenly you have a whole art show you can mount with the examples you've created there. Again, I think it always benefits from a slightly darker background. I think it makes the colors jump a little bit more at you. And it's interesting, some of these don't fade quite as quickly as you want. Let's try setting the shade 7 on this one and see if it, yeah, now we get some more distinct lines, but we wander when we do it at 7, we wander all the way up past 100, and you can see it starts turning green again. So maybe 6 could be a magic number for us. Yeah, that's good. It does turn darker again in the middle there. So 5 is the number that gets us all the way to 100. Cool. That one's worth saving. Oh, we did save that one. Good. And all right. Let's take a look at this ArtLogo one before we finish up here. The Dreamtime variations there's quite a bit of code included in this one. So if I drop this one into ArtLogo rather, you'll notice there aren't procedures over here. There isn't one called go. There's just lines. But the way that this one is going to work is that the turtle knows how to dot a size and a color. And then the lines procedure is feeding it, specific. It's just another tile. But what I was trying to do was make it look more hand-drawn, in that the lines aren't perfectly vertical. They are pretty horizontally in line, but you'll notice they kind of waver on the vertical axis. Oh, and then the other idea that I was thinking of playing with too was here in TurtleArt, where yesterday, we did in ArtLogo, we did a spiral. So let's look at that real fast in ArtLogo. This guy. Okay, so with this we use the arc with a radius of 20, an angle of 20, and then we grow it from 10 onwards. Okay, so in TurtleArt, what I was thinking of is, let's reload this, is let's use the spiral idea again. So we'll store in box 1, 10. And then we'll do a repeat of 500. Do an arc with an angle of 20 and a radius of box 1, and then store in box 1, whatever's in box 1, plus 5, and see where that gets us. Okay, 2 might be tighter, great. And then what I thought we could do with this spiral is kind of build a spiraling design around it. So what if we did something along the lines of programming a dot, and that's just going to be forward 0 after we set the pen size. So let's set the pen size to whatever is in box 2. Okay, and let's also, while we're here, set the shade to whatever is in box 3. We're going to go out on a bang. We're going to use all the boxes. Okay, and then we'll go forward. 0. So we have this spiral idea and we have this dot idea. So maybe what it does is it goes 20 and then it draws a dot. And it'll do another 20 and draw a dot. So we ought to get something along the lines of, it doesn't like the dot because right now we haven't fed it what the pen size is and stuff. So let's store in box 2, number 4, and store in box number 3, 50. And then store in box 1, which is the, now we aren't going to notice the dot because it's the same size as our line, so let's change the dot to 8. Nope, we're getting that. Let's see, store in box. Okay, that's the pen size, good. So what we need to do here is we need to set the pen size on the arc to 4, and then we'll set the pen size on the dot to 8, and we get that. Okay, so good. This is getting to where I want it to be. So then I want the dot to start pretty small, like a 2. And we're actually going to pick up the pen when it does the arc, and then we're going to put the pen back down when it's done with the arc. And then it'll do a dot. But the dot, I think, will get progressively bigger. So the dot, we're going to store, after it draws a dot, we'll store in box 2, whatever's in box 2 plus 0.5. Okay. And we also need to set the shade here to something reasonable. So let's set the shade to, it's going to start dark. So let's set the shade down to like 20. And then it's going to progressively get lighter. So let's set the shade here. So store in box 3, whatever's in box 3, which starts as 20. And then let's start by just adding like 0.5 to that. And let's run this and see what madness we create. Nice, okay. That's about what I was hoping it would do. I think the arc, we need to, the spiral rather, we need to open it up a bit. So that's box 1. So let's change that to 5 where we started. Too much, but maybe 4. Better. 3. That's close. I liked how many dots I'm seeing at 2, but I don't like how much they're overlapping. And what's controlling that is box 2 here. So maybe let's increase box 2 by just 0.25. And see what that looks like. Nice, okay. Maybe 0.4. Yeah, okay, I'll take it. And then it's getting a little washed out. So let's change box 3 that it's adding just 0.25? No, let's go to 0.3. Let's see. Yeah, that's good. And then again, I think it just pops better with a darker background. Let's try good old -999, and let's try 30. That's pretty good. Okay, I like that one. We'll save that. And it kind of reminds me, let me dig this one up. Kind of reminds me of another one I did where I was playing with giving the illusion of depth. So let me dig that one up real quick because I did a better job on that older one. Let's see here. Oh, this is one from one of my friend's students in Hong Kong. It'll blow your mind. I have no clue how he programmed this, but it's a good one. I think it's still going. No. Something's broken on it. But that original image I dumped in, you gotta appreciate that, right? That's just craziness. Okay, going for that one that gives us the, you can see how many I've programmed over the years here, making it nice and difficult to find the one you're looking for. There's some tile floors. That's always a good inspiration. That's got some good grout in there between the two. Actually, it's like two grouts. There's a dark gray and then a really thin black running over it. This is a fun one that Brian showed me, and then I played around with the design. Let's make it simple here. And the way that this one is working is, let me see here. Do we need all of this? Let me make the pen size smaller. Okay. So then the way that this one's working is, yeah, so it's drawing a 180-degree arc. Let's throw a little weight in here so you can better see it. So it draws this dashed ellipse, right? And then it goes right 20 degrees. And it does another one. And you add that up a bunch of times. It does that 18 times. Let's take the weight out. So when we do that, okay, and you do that 18 times, and you get that. So that's really crazy. Almost 3D looking sphere that you can do with that. And then let me just show you one more repository here. If you go to TurtleArt.org in your browser, this is where it all started. And you could still email them, but I think they're moving everything towards the web. But this is where you used to be able to go and grab your, request a copy of TurtleArt. But Brian and Artemis have posted a ton of their art up here, more than I remember there being. And if you click on it, we ought to be able to save the image. And then in TurtleArt, drop the image and get the code. So there's a really beautiful, that's a different maze every time. Awesome. So there's a really beautiful repository here at turtleart.org that you can dig through and remix to your heart's desire. So I hope you had a great time this week. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you continue to program. The best workshop I ever took around programming, he told us to sit down for an hour every day after the workshop and program something new for a week, and it'll really stick. And that was the best advice I ever got around programming and learning how to program in a new programming language. So I hope you continue to play around in TurtleArt and ArtLogo and continue coming up with new fun designs. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Josh. Also, what really impressed me is not only do you have these online sources for designs, but you have the world around you.
Yes.
Just take a photo of something like Josh did, of the floor or the carpet or a subway wall, trees, birds, cars, trains, automobiles, you name it, and then you can code to create your own design based on life. So everywhere you go, you're surrounded by art, you're surrounded by code, and you'll have a great time. Our thanks again to Roz and Bud Siegel for generously supporting this program. Our great thanks to Josh, and code on, everybody. I hope you have a great time. Thank you.
Thank you.